Trudeau's corporate welfare minister, Navdeep Bains, was on CBC bragging about medical mask manufacturing returning to Canada, but he sort of forgot to mention that the Canadian manufacturer he was bragging about had 3 of their factories stolen by the Chinese government in March.
I read a report in the Globe and Mail not too long ago today that says that 1 million masks, supposed to be rated to the K95 standard for respirators, arrived in Canada and were found to be not up to the standard needed for healthcare workers. Is that the total number of masks, defective masks? Are there more? Have you found other equipment that's coming from China that's defective?
Look, we know there'll be challenges when we procure from abroad. That's why we're building strong domestic capacity. One such example is Medicom, a company that we invested in to help scale up their facilities right here in Montreal for N95 masks and surgical masks as well. So we're building up strong domestic capacity, mobilizing industry to make sure we have made-in-Canada solutions that will protect Canadian frontline healthcare workers.
I take your point on that, Minister, but that domestic effort, while vigorous, is going to take a lot of time, which is something that your government has pointed out. It will take some time. In the meantime, you are procuring a significant portion of PPE from China. How much more of it, beyond these 1 million masks, is defective?
Look, I can tell you right now, we're going to have challenges from procuring items from around the world, and there's going to be challenges with respects to the quality. But what I'm also saying is that because the domestic capacity that we're building up, in which in many cases the delivery is happening in days, not weeks, and so we're building up that capacity to offset some of those challenges that we will encounter.
That fellow there is Navdeep Bains. In reality, in a practical sense, he's the corporate welfare czar of Canada. But his official title is the Minister of Innovation, Science, and Economic Development. But yeah, basically he hands out fat stacks of taxpayer cash to businesses the government has chosen to be the winners of the economy, or for that matter, don't need the money in the first place. Like this controversial $50 million handout to MasterCard, a company that made $16 billion in 2019. And that clip you saw was Bains with CBC's Vassey Kapelos, and credit where it's due. She was doing a pretty good job on her show, Power and Politics, to ask about the 1 million Chinese face masks that China sent to Canada that ultimately failed to meet our health and safety standards. And of course, that's all on top of the 2 planes Canada sent to retrieve masks from China in return for the 16 tons of face masks from Canada's strategic stockpile that Trudeau sent to China well after the coronavirus had already spread to our country. Now, those 2 planes came back completely empty because of airport congestion. Have you ever heard of an excuse so stupid or unbelievable? Anyway, did you notice the company that Bains was talking about as a success story of how Canadian companies are now ramping up local production to address supply shortages? It was Medicom. And yes, Medicom is ramping up local production, but not really because of anything the Liberals have done to encourage it. It's actually desperation. Now, here's a story on the topic from the Globe and Mail. Medicom Inc., which is based in Pointe Claire, Quebec, is aiming to open its first mask factory in Canada by July. It will supply 30 million to 50 million surgical and fine particle blocking N95 masks per year to Ottawa under a proposed long-term agreement generating 10 million to 20 million in annual sales. The private company currently makes masks in China, Taiwan, France, and the United States. Medicom will be building masks in Canada, that's true. However, it's because the Chinese government nationalized 3 factories in mainland China from them. Look at this from CNN of all places. Medicom, a Canadian manufacturer, has 3 factories in China, but the Chinese government has requisitioned all production and nothing is being exported, according to the company's COO, Guillaume Lavendure. Factories in France and Taiwan are subject to official export bans. Laverdure said the company is trying to increase its capacity and it's adding both equipment and staff at its U.S. and French factories. For the moment, though, the company is prioritizing its existing customers, mainly medical distributors and hospitals. We estimate that around 80% of the face masks worldwide are manufactured in China, Laverdure said. Overnight, it was 80% of the world's supply which was cut, so that creates a huge demand on the existing production capacities outside of China. A Canadian company building products that Canadians need, albeit building them in China, has 3 of their factories stolen from them by the CCP for the exclusive use of China, and the corporate welfare minister thinks this is some sort of a good news story. And worse yet, just like Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Bains can't even muster a soft criticism of what China did to Medicom and to Canadians by proxy, taking first our pandemic supplies, then taking our pandemic supply chain, and then putting frontline workers at risk. I hope that UN Security Council seat is worth it. For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn-Reid. While many of our so-called competitors in the media landscape are going to be working hard to cover for their paymasters, the Liberals, for their failures, we are going to be working hard to hold them to account. You can help us do that. Just go to helprebelnews.com.